Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Playbook for Performance podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Corden, and my mission is to make work fun again. This week, we are talking about skill development to prevent polarization. And one of the best things that we can do to prevent polarization is to ask really good questions. And asking good questions is a skill. It's something that we need to practice. And as a coach, as a faculty member who teaches aspiring professional coaches, as a instructor and coach that mentors leaders on asking good coaches and using coaching skills in their management, it's something that I work with regularly. And there are people who ask really good questions and people who do not. So let's get into it so you can learn to ask really good questions too. So, preventing polarization really requires asking good questions. What's your current skill level on questioning? Do you ask questions to which you already know answers? Do you ask yes/no questions? Do you wait till people are done responding before you formulate your next question? Or are you really just doing an interrogation? And that's often what happens. So let's break it down and get into it. What is the purpose of your question? Are you asking questions to collect information, or are you asking questions to advance an agenda? So if you're in a meeting, whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a group meeting, you usually have an agenda. You have an objective that you're trying to reach in the meeting. Now, in our informal conversations with friends and family, we don't say, here at the dinner table, we are going to talk about the best form of American leadership. We don't do that. We just naturally let conversations evolve. But if we're a little bit more intentional, we can ask better questions. So is the purpose of the conversation to further understanding, to create empathy, to arrive at a conclusion, to collaborate on a decision? What is it that you're really trying to do? And how do you start a question? The very first thing that I tell all my students is, don't say why. And the reason why is because it tends to make people defensive. So if you say, why did you do that? You're like, well, because I thought it was important. I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to come up with the, you just feel like you have to explain yourself, defend your actions. It really puts people on the back foot. So we don't want to use the word why. We really want to avoid that. There are other ways of asking questions that get to why that are less threatening. Like, help me understand, walk me through, things like that can really help. The other one that I would say is related to why, that I have personal problems with, is what were you thinking? Because again, puts them on the back foot, makes them defend why they did what they did, etc. So here's some good ways to start questions. Who? Who do you have to be to accomplish this task? Who are you with? Who do you admire? Those are great who kinds of questions. What? What are we trying to accomplish? What's behind this? What place do you have in this context? Those are good what questions. Where? Where are we starting from? Where are we trying to get to? Where were you when this all began? Where are you now? When? When did this belief first emerge? When did you notice this? When did this happen? When would you like to be done? When do you want to celebrate? And then how? How should we go about doing this? How do we need to behave to make this happen? How does this process work? How did we get here? How do you see yourself in this situation? They're all really good questions because they're open-ended. They don't allow for a yes or no answer. We also want to understand context of our conversation partner. How do they see themselves in the context of the world? How do they see the world? Do they believe that people are to be trusted before they earn trust? Or no one is to be trusted? What's the context? So open-ended is always the way to go because what it allows for is to go to the essence. So in our previous podcast, number 58, we were talking about the idea of the who people are. That's the essence. Those are the things that are their values, their boundaries, their standards, their needs, where they're really coming from. And in general, I like to think that people's essence really doesn't change. We like to upgrade our standards. We like to strengthen our boundaries. But generally, your values, what you valued when you were 5 years old, tend to be adult versions of that at 55 years old. If you like to play treasure map, X marks the spot, under here is buried treasure, you probably like forms of adventure, maybe on a little more tame scale, today, if you're 55. Okay? So whenever we can ask questions that have to do with essence versus the what. So last episode we talked a little bit about the what. The what tends to be the packaging, the demographics, the things that change. They're not constant. So our appearance, our job title, things like that, those change. They're not necessarily who we are. So we want to ask questions about the essence. What do you need out of this? What's important to you about this? Why are we talking about this today? You want to avoid the use of the word why, but what makes this important? Okay, one of my favorite colleagues, he loves to ask, why is this the most important topic for us to talk about today? What makes this so important? So we want to make sure that people are really talking about stuff of value versus like the thing that's top of mind because it's more urgent versus important. We also want to ask questions that help support their sense of integrity. So remember, in coaching, we don't talk about integrity as a moral compass of right and wrong, but we talk about it as, are you being true to your values? So if the environment is a value for you, are you doing things that are gunking it up? Because that would be out of integrity. That would be the equivalent of talking out of both sides of your mouth. So we want to ask questions that help support that. What habits and behaviors do you have that will help support this goal? Things like that. So we really want to ask good questions that help us discover things. The number one goal of our questions is to create awareness, because once we have awareness, we can make decisions fully informed. But if that awareness is hidden, if we're ignorant, we're probably not going to go far. We're probably going to try some trials, and they're not going to turn out the way that we had hoped because we didn't uncover what really needed to be revealed. So that's our little mini lesson today on asking good questions. Next week, we're going to talk about listening, because that's the other half of preventing polarization. So don't miss out. Be sure you join us next week. Now, field work, because every week we have field work. Coaching without action is just entertainment. We want you to practice questioning with a trusted colleague. So probably the easiest way to do this is to record a Zoom call. A lot of you have the ability to have a transcript created with your Zoom call. If not, you can use a very inexpensive tool called rev.com, R-E-V.com. And they can do a digital transcript for pennies per minute. Doesn't have to be a long phone call. But basically, you want to review that transcript and review your questions. And basically edit them. Rewrite them so that they are better questions. You might find that you use why or how come, or you had some close-ended questions. Rewrite them and just practice. The other advice that I can really give that to practice is to breathe. We often think there isn't enough time in our conversation for space. But one of the best things that we can do for others is silence. Silence allows people to continue thinking, to finish processing that thought. It allows us to take a moment to come up with a better question. And it's okay to say, I'm trying to think about what question I want to ask you. Okay? That is okay. It's perfectly fine to do that. The more simple the question, usually the better. So, until next week, take good care. But don't forget, you can like, you can subscribe here on the YouTube channel. You can also send us a message. If you'd like me to come in and do a lunch and learn for your team and teach these questioning skills, if you'd like your team to go through coaching skills for leaders, we can do lunch and learns, half day, full day, and 2-day workshops. So be sure and send a message to Shauna or podcast@shaunacorden.com. We'd love to help you out. Until next week, when we talk about listening, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.